Hello and welcome everybody to Simply Technical. We're back again here. I believe it's episode 15. That's what I titled the recording. So I'm sure that's right because I'm super smart. Joined again with Keaton. We're both co-hosts here. Thank you guys for the support on all the videos. Shorts are popping off, especially those Sam ones. Sam's doing a great job, or did a great job, I guess. We post-produced them. We're joined with Connor, who's down below.
Hello, everyone.
Connor, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name's Connor, if you didn't catch already. Friends with Keaton beforehand, met Evan along the way. So happy to be here.
And we're going to kind of talk about a little bit of sensitive topic. Nothing to be taken lightly is depression and kind of why depression is on the incline with young people and society in general, at least here in America. And maybe even the Midwest, I guess. We called Connor, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and we're like, hey, you want to come on the podcast? This is kind of something that we discussed a little bit in partial throughout some episodes, but...
yeah, and I guess I can give a little bit of my background in general, at least why this random you asked me to talk about this. I got my original degree is in business management, but my master's is in marriage and family therapy. So I got that, or I graduated in 2020. And then I've been practicing since like early 2021. And so I'm hoping around, it kind of just depends on the hours. Honestly, you have to get 3,000 hours to be licensed. And so I'm hoping by the summer I'll be fully licensed and be able to do everything that entails. But that's a little, I guess, a tiny bit about my background. Maybe if it pops up more, we can talk about it more, but that's the purpose of me being here.
Business is booming right now.
Business is booming. Exactly. Yes. I love it. I love the despair.
So I guess you're not a counselor yet is what you're saying, but are you considered a coach? Is that kind of the...
I am. I counselor or therapist doesn't really matter. I call myself a therapist. Okay. It sounds more professional to me, in my opinion. I think, semantics, honestly, but to me, it speaks towards a little bit more like hardcore work, but it doesn't matter. But yes, I am a therapist. I'm seeing people. I've got, I don't know, close to 3,000 hours of face-to-face time up to this point. It's just in order to be fully licensed on the board, or the board in Oklahoma, you need 3,000 hours. And so each state is different. Some need 5, some need 2. It kind of just depends. So my technical title right now is, and more semantics. My degree is in marriage and family therapy. My license in Oklahoma is as an LPC, which is just a licensed professional counselor. So for right now, I'm a licensed professional counselor candidate.
Okay.
But that'll change.
And once you get that, will you be able to open up your own practice?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, do all those sorts of things, bill insurance, all that good sort of stuff. Just for now, I've got to be under supervision under someone.
Okay. Yeah. So along the topic of depression, I guess we're seeing that numbers are rising as far as...
Yeah, I would say this.
Okay.
There's been a strong inflection point in the curve of depression going up at around 2010, 11, and it's gotten way worse over even the last 2 or 3 years. And I guess that's kind of what we want to talk about. Why is the mental health state of the U.S. deteriorating, especially with the young people?
Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile question, and there's lots of reasons there. Before I forget again, none of this is all just Connor opinion, no therapy advice or nothing like that. But at least some of the things that I wrote down, just kind of like in general, when you guys first asked me this question, because I think on the chart, maybe you sent me Keith a while back. It was like you said, a specific point, like in those early 2000s, or not early 2010s.
You can see it, yeah. I could share it in a couple minutes once I find it, but you could see it in 2011. It's just like, boom, straight up.
Yeah, which what one could say that's easily connected with technology or the rise of things like Snapchat and Facebook and all this sort of stuff, which is probably true. You will, if I talk long enough, you will see, for the most part, not necessarily ride the fence on lots of things, but I'm a both and type of person. I don't normally stay in just one area. So in general, when the question, why is it rising? Some of the things I thought of, just pretty quickly. One, again, in my opinion, at least, and this is kind of a broad spectrum, not for everyone, but in general, one thing that I thought of was like the lack of valuing of community, very individualized.
Yeah.
In terms of even in families, sitting on your phones or going and playing Xbox or doing X, Y, and Z, just splitting of connecting with people. So that's maybe one thing we can talk about later on, I guess. But that was one. One is easy to think of as just technology. I think I shared this with you, Keith, a while back or a couple weeks ago thinking on it. But that idea of when we have the ability to connect with anyone, we really aren't connecting with anyone.
Yeah.
We lose that.
I literally used that exact line in my lesson at the college
There we go.
last week. So
I'll take $5 for that, please. But that's another one of just kind of, I don't think that's wrong. I think technology does have a place in this, but I don't know if that's the pinpoint. I think one that kind of is, honestly, is just naming it. Like we name it a lot more often. We call it, I don't want to say for what it is, but people are more open to say they're depressed. I would argue pretty strongly, like my grandpa was probably pretty depressed at times in his life when he was working for freaking 80 hours a week in the field and then having to come home, do all the things at home. He just didn't necessarily call it that. So I think that's a little bit, to me, and Evan, you mentioned this at the beginning, the biggest, in my opinion, is like lack of identity. And really the like self-identification of identity is, to me, like the biggest problem, because that puts us in a huge pickle. But any one of those, I guess we can start on if y'all want to, but those are kind of my ideas.
Let's start with the last one, the identity part, because I don't quite fully understand. So
yeah, let me try to word that better. The question is, why is young people the rise of depression or rise of feeling that way? And even that, to me, depression you can think of pretty easily as like a DSM-5 set of symptoms. To me, for the most part, not all the time, but for the most part, there's something that makes things make sense. We just got to ask the right questions. And so for the most part, I don't think people just randomly get depressed. I think there's reasons why they feel so crappy about their life or themselves. And to me, at least one big reason, obviously not the reason, but in my opinion, a big one of that rise is, again, in general, the idea of the individual deciding who they are, who they want to be, all that good sort of stuff. In general, that's fine. But what that puts us in a position of is, like, imagine, an imaginary line, like in between my two fingers. How long would y'all say that line is? Like in inches?
4 inches.
4 inches. Keith, what would you say?
6 inches.
6 inches. All right, I say 8. Which one of us is right? Right? We got to get a ruler, right? Yeah. There's a standard of measurement for this, imaginary line. Mm-hmm. We would all agree if it said 7 inches or 4 inches, whatever it said, we'd be like, okay, that's what it is. And in my opinion, what we do is we have a person and we say, okay, well, what's that person's standard? How do we know who this person is? And what the world says is either you guys decide it or I decide it, which puts us in a pretty precarious situation, because I either have to, all my worth is valued in how you see me, which is probably going to be skewed and never solid, or it's on me. I get to decide, which is even more shaky. Like some days I feel great about myself. Some days I feel terrible. So which one's true? And it like splits us, in my opinion. And so that takes us to a deeper discussion of like identity in Christ or identity in something, a higher power. Mm-hmm. But when we put that identity on ourselves, then not like what else is there, but it takes away purpose in terms of, shoot, well, I don't like myself or X, Y, and Z, and now I'm just pulling myself down. So I don't know if that answers your question a little bit better, but
yeah, that makes sense. It's like, okay, if you have to define yourself, then you almost force the world to conform to your identity, and then that can cause sort of disputes between how the world sees you and how you see yourself in a way.
Because even in the same way, what if Keaton likes me and Evan doesn't? Well, then like who? And I like myself. Like no, which one's right? It just puts you in this really like stuck position of always questioning yourself. And then as a 14-year-old, your brain isn't fully developed. You're solely focused on peers and their relationships a lot less than your families. And so, and I don't 14, 15, 16-year-old kids like suck. Like they're rude, they're mean, they're emotional, all that sort of stuff. And so
when they're defending their identity as well.
Exactly. And
finding it, I guess.
Yeah, it's a weird time of life. And so that general question or that idea of topic of why the rise, I think that is one a big reason why is pushing that on kids and on people is, well, you get to decide. And as a 14-year-old, like your hormones are going crazy, your emotions going everywhere. And most people are pretty critical of themselves. I think that's in general a good thing. If it's in a healthy place, it drives you forward. But most people aren't healthy, in my opinion.
Well, and how much of that, I might be moving too quick here, Keaton, but
no.
How much of that identity is driven by like social media or like, because you said the peers and you're being connected. If you're connected with everyone, you're really connected with no one, I think is what you said. How does that shape your identity, I guess, of social media? Because you can see your friends or peers, I guess, of, well, they went on this cool vacation, their parents are richer than mine, or you're so self-absorbed with the like button and so forth. How does that shape your identity or your, I guess, even your reality?
Yeah, it's in my opinion not good. One of my random best decisions I ever made was not best decisions, a good decision though, was like junior year of high school, I deleted Instagram. I've never had it since. There's a time where I made like a fake one in college just to be stupid and post a few like memes on there. But other than that, I've never had an Instagram. And I feel like that served me well. I'm not an expert in brain chemistry and brain development and all that good sort of stuff. It's helpful to know at least a little bit, but in general, as you're developing your focus, I guess is an easy way of saying that, is on peers in that teenage years. It strips a lot away from family, and it's your peers mean a lot more to you than your parents do. I think we all can relate to that on some form of our life. And so with social media, we all know this. I feel like it's not rocket science, as everyone either puts their best foot forward or just a completely false foot forward on that. And for us, I think it's, again, if you're in a relatively healthy place and more an adult, like you can see that for what it is, but even still, it's hard to parse out feeling that idea of comparison. And so as a young kid, you either haven't heard that, you don't know that, it's hard to actually think that way because your brain isn't developed far enough to think in those terms. It's all either on self or on peers. And so if we're comparing, like, shoot, yeah, you're going to be way like me compared to some dude in England with millions of followers and millions of dollars, who's better looking, who you can't see now, but I got no hair, who's got hair. Like it's easy to see all these billions of people who are better than you. And the reality is what's difficult is, how's a nice way of saying this? Like there's lots of people that are better than you. And so there's always going to be someone better in that way. It's to me, that again, what's that idea of going back to identity is, okay, but who am I? Where's my worth and value? If it's wrapped up in those things, I'm screwed because there's always going to be someone better, doing more, achieving more. My identity is in something else and solid. That's the stuff I can fall back on. Again, that kind of went away from technology, but that idea of, I don't think social media is helpful for kids.
So I want to branch off with a question about this, but I want to hold it for just a second and mention, do you think also that the social media in a way now has sort of evolved from, it used to be like more connected with your friends and family. Like if you go on Facebook, Facebook was literally just friends and family. And now Twitter was kind of like edging out away from that a little bit. And now TikTok and Instagram Reels is like literally people you have no relations to whatsoever. And I think that in that way, you can start to find these outlets where you get in this echo chamber that affirm your sort of self identity,
Mhm.
and that there's this level of when you are not in this echo chamber and you're surrounded by actual physical peers, they will kind of push you away from being an idiot.
Mhm.
Like, okay, why would you wear that stupid pink shirt and the purple pants at the same time? Like, you look like an idiot, and then you won't do it again. And then
Yeah.
you go online and you find the pink shirt, purple pants group that say, oh yeah, you should do this every day, and then it sort of amplifies this disconnect with reality in a way. Do you
Yeah.
think that's true, or
I think it's definitely true. Because you can find it. There's lots, I don't want to say weirdos, but like you can find anything and anyone to agree with you on the internet. There's too many people.
Mhm.
And not like that the internet or Instagram or social media is all bad. Um, that's that either or I don't really particularly like. I think there's good from all of them, but um, yeah, I think we are
Mhm.
really disconnected from people, and the internet makes it very easy to have like a pseudo connection with people.
Mhm.
Like in a guilty pleasure of mine, a place I'm trying to get away from more is like I like watching YouTube. Like
Yeah.
it's an easy escape for me after doing X, Y, and Z at work. Like I can watch just random crap on there. It's easy. And I can put it on double speed or like one half, so I can go through it quick. But one of like the channels I really enjoy is called the Sidemen. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them.
Uh,
They're like a big British YouTuber group that's just funny and does skits, and they have kind of similar humor to what we had kind of in high school and in
oh
early
gosh.
college. Yeah, yeah. Um, but they're fun. There are times when I feel and connect. Oh yeah, I love this guy Harry. He's so funny. I love this guy. He's so funny. I have no idea who they are. Like
Mhm.
I have no actual connection to them. And maybe if I saw them as a fan one day, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, what's up, mate? Like, cool. Thanks for watching us." But I feel connected to them, but in reality, my physical being is not connected to them at all. And so
Mhm.
it creates this like dissonance of my like there's a part of me that feels connected to people, but the real part of me that needs connection, the physical, the stuff that we can't necessarily ascribe or give like tangible meaning to, is not there. And so then I
Mhm.
feel lonely. Well, the place I feel less lonely is watching the Sidemen, which is a completely lonely and not like hopeless, but it's a disconnecting action.
Mhm.
So the things that are to me driving connection or making me feel connected are actually pulling me away from the things that I actually need. And so we just get stuck in this loop. At least what it sounds
Yeah.
like you're kind of just trying to
Well,
describe.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
so what's the term you're most like the five people around you, or
Hmm.
you know what I'm talking about, Keaton? I think
Mm-hmm.
you've said it before on a
Oh.
podcast.
Yeah. Essentially, exactly what you said.
You're the five. You're a makeup of the five people that
You're the
are
average of the
around you.
five people you spend the most time with.
Are
Yeah.
you pseudo replacing? Are you fakely replacing one of those five with this content or this social media app? Kind of. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Are you for me or just
Like
in
in
general?
general, like okay, if for your example, like you really love the Sidemen. Well, instead of being connected with these five people that are you're an average of, well, replace one of those with the Sidemen channel, or
Mm-hmm.
Harry or KSI from the group. Like replace that fifth friend with that content creator, and like you said, it's pseudo, it's fake.
Mm-hmm.
Is that maybe a thing? I don't know if that's or if the driving that.
Yeah, I think that's a thing. I don't know how much if there's like any studies or anything like that, but I think tons of kids and adults are in that space, not an easy way, but um, maybe a more connecting way is like with sports or with something else. You see your favorite guy on TV, you see your favorite politician there, and you feel connected to him. You don't know them like for jack squat, and they might actually be, or a favorite
Well,
actor. They might be a horrible person, but we feel
I think
connected
it's
to.
likely there.
Yeah, definitely so, in my opinion. Uh, but it feels closer because they're more aligned with either your views or X, Y, and Z's. But then it leaves you in this place. Dang, I wish I had a group like the Sidemen. I wish I had friends like that. Well, instead I'll just go watch them be friends, and like they're connected. I guess I don't know, but it just leaves you in this place by yourself. So I think absolutely people can fill those kind of roles or spots.
Along that line, the sort of you're watching other people be friends instead of having friends. I sort of kind of related. It's the weirdest like phenomenon in the world that there are these like 4 to 10-year-old kids love to watch other kids play with toys on YouTube. It's like the biggest thing. This kid, like Ryan's Toys or whatever, is the biggest YouTuber.
Yeah.
And all he's doing is playing with toys, and kids are watching him play with toys instead of playing with toys themselves. It's the weirdest thing. And I don't even know. Like, I don't think we're scientific, or actually, I will say that would be scientism to sort of say this, but I don't think we're ever going to be at the point to be able to scientifically understand how this is actually bad for you. Like, why is being connected in person so much more important than being connected online? It's obviously it's true, but I'm afraid that we're gonna be waiting on studies that are not possible to happen, because it's not like a scientific question. It's like something deep and a little bit irrational.
Yeah, I don't know. It might be like closer than you think.
Really?
Because I like at least to me, it's getting more and more like polarized in terms of how far people are going on that down that path. Not to say all is bad and one is good. That's not the case. But in general, again, I guess that's fairly subjective. It would be hard to find like a tangible like evidence. What is happiness or what equates? That's fairly ambiguous. But like, at least in my opinion, it's obvious when you look at someone who is in that place, maybe disconnected or have those suitor connections, versus someone who is connected in like their real world, real life. It's like an obvious aura around them, the energy they've got, the way they're talking about themselves or focused on others, all those different things. I guess I don't know if that's you can physically say that.
There is something weird, like on social media, we're not getting our physical connection, but also I don't necessarily know if like physical connection is the actual, like physically being in person with each other is 100% necessary. I will say that like the best times I spend with my family or like brothers is playing Xbox with them, like online. And I feel like that's a lot different or a lot more similar to sitting next to them than it is to be on Facebook or Twitter with them and tweet at them or whatever, or texting. And I don't know, I guess that's another weird one that is sort of like this middle space.
Yeah. It's not all bad for sure. I think like these headphones right here, I've got them for the sole purpose of me and my friends from college, who are some of my really closest friends, like have a 2K team. And we're not very good, but one lives in Atlanta, one lives in Oklahoma City, and one lives in Little Rock. So there's really no tangible way for us to be together. But we started that in August or September, whenever this most recent 2K came out. And it's been so nice because I actually get to hear their voice. I get to like talk to them. We get to laugh with each other. And we're far away. So that's definitely like aspects of that are great. In my opinion, it's still I needed the physical part. I needed our relationship to grow like in real world in order for that to be possible on the back end. If that makes sense. And then that's not always the case. People can make cool friends online, but I haven't had that experience before, so I can't necessarily speak to that one.
So this brings me back, or wraps me back to the question I was originally going to ask a few minutes ago. This is definitely like a sex/gender dependent, or there's definitely like this separation between the males and the females, where females are almost certainly more impacted by social media, at least according to the stats, than males are. And sort of coinciding with this Xbox thing, I mean, generally males tend to play Xbox video games more. And I always wonder, like, me and Lydia always talk about, like, how do girls don't really have that sort of equivalent long distance hangout the way guys tend to.
It was always fun.
You can take that wherever you want.
It was always funny growing up. Like I have two sisters,
Mhm.
and I don't know, like snow days, summers, like anything like that. Gaming, I'm out. We're either outside for a little while, then we go inside and game or whatever that is. Like my wife and they just do nothing. What do you guys do? You guys need a hobby or something like that. But yeah, I think especially for young women and young girls, again, to me, it wraps a lot back towards identity.
Mhm.
Most guys, in general, they get a great sense of purpose. They get a great sense of identity in performance. What can I go and do? What can I go and provide? And a little bit skewy there, but like there's ways that makes sense. I'm going to go provide for my family. I'm going to go hunt and kill. I got to go do these things. Um, for women, at least right now, in my opinion, in society, a lot of what they're told their identity or their purpose is in appearance, how they look,
Mhm.
and so then they do everything they can to try to appear in that way, appear either appeasing or beautiful or whatever it is. And then if you're on social media, there's always someone better,
Mhm.
someone bigger X, prettier this, smaller there. And it just drives you down because if your identity is in that, then it just keeps stacking and stacking higher and higher, all these people. And it's like, well, then where am I? I'm just going lower and lower. And so it's a really big problem. I see lots of girls who have a poor sense of identity and a poor sense of that poured into them from a young age, from either their fathers or their peers or their mothers or whoever that is. It's not wrapped up in beauty or appearance. And so I think, especially on Instagram and those kind of like platforms or things like that, it's very much, at least what I think of, as
Mhm.
comparison based and appearance based for girls. And so I think for sure, I think that makes sense of why, especially in teenage girls, it's significantly higher than guys. Because guys, you can compare with things, but with
Kind of becomes a
muscles,
competition with guys. It's like, okay, well,
yeah,
I can do it. It's like,
yeah,
you see the jacked guy that's actually on steroids, but in your high school, you don't know that, so you're like, I
yeah,
could do that.
yeah. See The Rock or something like that. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that guy's so cool. Yeah, he's also just
Well, how much of that
inject.
is based on our like decision making? Like guys usually think more I don't want to say logically, more calculated, I guess,
Mm,
and females being more um emotional, I guess.
hmm,
I I, I mean maybe I got those wrong, but that's how I kind of tend to view men's decision making, or views on themselves are more logical. Like, okay, I might compare myself to some buff guy like on Instagram or TikTok or something, and like, man, I need to hit the gym and be like that. And then I don't get depressed when I don't achieve that, or I don't get upset at myself for not achieving that, because I'm like, well, I didn't put in the work, so like I don't deserve.
hmm.
So like I don't know. I think more, like I said, calculated in those things, and maybe that helps with that. And maybe women tend to be a little more emotional. Of, well, if only I could just do that magically. Maybe I
I,
offended somebody. I don't
I
know.
don't know. I would jump in here and say I think it's exactly how Connor just said. Is girls tend to be, though society sort of pushes that the appearance is everything, and uh, I think when you're constantly told that, it messes with your head, with your brain. Like if you look at
Hmm,
any female celebrity, there's a big difference between male celebrities and female celebrities generally.
hmm,
Every celebrity tends to be attractive, but females are always tend to be this like extreme version of attractiveness where it's like too much. Like I mean, you think about Kim Kardashian, it's like everything is all accentuated and extreme, whereas some male celebrities don't
Jack Black.
necessarily. You can find
yeah.
female versions of that, but male celebrities, I guess some might be jacked, like The Rock or the guy who plays Thor, but most of them are kind of just dudes that have a pretty face. And
Hmm,
they do something good, do something really well. So that aspect of appearance is always number one. And on top of that, if you think back to our time in school, kind of we were like the first generation to really have social media. I think
hmm.
before social media could do its real damage.
Damage, yeah.
But girls always tended to be more susceptible to like these mental health disorders, particularly when we were in school, like gosh, why can't I think of what the medical term is? Whenever you throw up a lot to
Like anorexia?
anorexia, yes, those definitely tended to affect women way more than boys. And I think now our new form of this is starting to like manifest in the whole identity sort of gender spectrum stuff that's going on, and all of the extra appearance.
Yeah.
Everything always ends up coming back to appearance in some way. Anorexia was, and I think that the gender identity stuff is a lot of it rooted in appearance and being unhappy with your appearance. So switching to the other side.
And at least in my opinion, because that can get a rabbit hole pretty quickly
Yeah.
of those ideas. But it to me, all of it, like it all filters back down to that identity.
Mm-hmm.
Because where is the identity placed? If it is an appearance, then we're screwed in there. We've got to do things to either change that. And lots of those different things can come from there. I don't, my thought kind of escaped me on that, but to me, a lot of those ideas fall back into that place. If that is solid, then it gives us the freedom to fail and feel and mess up and do all the sorts of stuff on that outside. It's the difference between feeling depressed and just you are.
Yeah.
Those are like, they couldn't be further apart. Like, okay, so say there's tons of things going on in your life. I don't know, your dad beats you, your dad hates you, he's absent, and then you're gone, then you have no friends, and then this happens, and it's like, well, I'm just depressed forever. Like, you've got pretty good reasons to be depressed. Like that, duh.
Yeah.
But we take on the identification of that and say that's who I am, not I'm feeling that way, which it gets us stuck. And so to like that idea of that identity is so foundational to me. It's the core of everything. Of if that is strong, if we can find truth in that, and like in my opinion, that's not in any of us, but in him. When we can have not solidarity, like a solid ground there, then it gives us a ton of freedom to feel depressed or feel anxious or feel sad or feel joyous or feel crazy. I was talking with someone today. They're like, man, I just feel crazy. And they're going through like tons of crap, like more than I could possibly imagine they're going through. Like, well, shoot, yeah, you're feeling crazy. But what's more annoying to me is you're telling yourself you're crazy and that you shouldn't feel this way. And then you're splitting yourself. And then we just feel more crazy because we're trying to push it away or feel not depressed. You know, again, I don't want to be preachy on that, but those are kind of my thoughts, at least in general, on some of those things.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. I had a thought and I was completely lost it.
Well, while you think of that, so identity and purpose, that's kind of similar topics. How much of our identity and how much of our purpose is driven from our day-to-day job?
In general? Or are you asking how much it should be?
Both.
I think for a lot of people, and that switches gears. I think, well, I don't want to get like necessarily like sexist because there's lots of women who aren't necessarily at home moms or staying at home, but in general for guys, if they are working, a lot of them their purpose or identity is in their job. So it wraps up a majority of their day. And then like on the opposite, not the opposite side, but for women, if you are a mother or things like that, staying at home, it wraps up the majority of your day. And which is great. I like to, you know, who are you? You know, people will say, well, I'm a plumber, I'm a musician, I'm a this. Okay, no, that's what you do. Who are you? And we like narrow these things down, and people have a really hard time parsing that out. So I think a lot of people, especially if they don't think about it a lot, can get wrapped up in that. My identity is what I do, especially for guys. What it should be is very minimal, because you could do anything. I don't know if that answers your question well.
Well, and maybe it is kind of going back to that of the different genders is when, say, somebody introduces you and you're male. Okay, well, what do you do for work? That's usually one of the first questions. Where are you from, or what do you do? Those are kind of the two questions. If you're introducing like, hey, I got a girlfriend. Well, what's she look like, man? What's she look like? She pretty? Like, so like that is society. Not to blame everything on society, but that's just kind of how we describe each other. Like, if male, okay, well, what do you do? Female, oh, what you look like.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there's lots of things that we do like that are kind of unconscious. And I don't know, again, my opinion, I don't know how like inherently bad that is. Talking about a woman and her appearance as the first thing is probably not ideal. That's probably not great. But in general, like the questions, oh, what does he look like? What does she look like? Are not inherently bad, but they
become the sole topic.
Things.
If they become the sole topic of a specific person of, okay, well, what do they do or what do they look like? That's does not necessarily, reap a good harvest, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And I like your distinction, or I don't know if you made a distinction. And to me, it is that idea of identity and purpose. Of identity is who you are. Purpose is like what you're driven or doing. At least to me. And so, okay, well, who is Evan? I don't know, X, Y, or Z, whatever you want to say. Well, what's your purpose? It's to go and do this, or be this person, or live my life in this way.
Be the greatest podcaster of all time.
Yeah, might be. I don't know. But I feel like those need to be split, because purpose doesn't have flaws, but the road to that is bumpy. We're going to fail and mess up. And so if our identity is linked up at purpose, we're a little screwy too, because it's always working and changing and difficult. That identity needs to be solid. Who am I? And then that can drive everything moving forward. So I don't know. I'm honestly might use that. I haven't really thought of that idea.
I guess I was kind of planning to do this towards the end, but it kind of naturally segues now. So how do you root identity correctly, and like orient your identity in a correct manner, in your opinion? What is the optimal?
And in Connor's opinion, that optimal place is in, I will say, a higher power or religion. But then if we go deeper in that, I believe personally that's in Jesus and that's in Christ. He's very explicit on who we are, and whose we are. That if you believe in that, can give you great comfort of, okay, like, what's the best way of saying this? Like the created does not get to describe itself. The creator does. So like I don't know, this mic does not say it's a mic. Like someone who created that gives it meaning. A dog does not decide, I don't know, it's a dog. It is just what it is. That's not a great one, because I guess God created that, but that same idea, I did not create myself. I guess my mom and dad did, but that continually goes back and back and back and back. Until you get to a place, well, then who did? And then that gives you meaning. To me, that's a great place. In general, though, not everyone believes that. And so that is a question that I, like, at least in general, put towards like people. Okay, we've got to have a meaning other than you, though. So whatever that is, that's fine with me. But like, we've got to find purpose or identity somewhere else in you that's in solid.
Yeah. This is kind of, this has been a lot of overlap with what I've tried to been teaching in a college class bit. But actually, I guess I didn't say this in college because I didn't want to talk about depression. But I had these stats pulled up essentially, you could see a clear divergence. We talked about this increase in depression, especially in young people. You can see a very clear divergence between the non-religious going way up and the religious, who goes up, but it does not go up nearly as much. There's a huge gap between that curve. And I almost assuredly think that it's because you have some sort of way to cope with suffering. Life is impossibly is suffering, I guess, in a way, and one of the main mechanisms to be able to cope with that is to know there's something greater than just this fleeting life.
like I don't know. I've never had to like I don't want to say never. I was brought up in, I guess, religion or church. I wasn't brought
Mhm.
up atheist or nothing like that. So that question wasn't always it was answered, and then I had to re-answer it later on in life, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
But it was answered early on. But like life is incredibly purposeless without like a higher power. Like I don't know if y'all have
Yeah,
ever had
yeah.
those thoughts where it's just
No,
like,
yeah, actually, I did say this in my lesson yesterday. Is there's a famous atheist philosopher, Thomas Nagel, who I guess he writes like sort of in-depth philosophy books, but he also has these uh, sort of pop culture easy intro philosophy books. And when he was asked like from an atheist point of view, what is the meaning of what is purpose in life? How do you find purpose or meaning in life? And he's like, well, if you want to find meaning and purpose, you need to not think too much about the universe.
mhm,
And you could like directly contrast that to C.S. Lewis, who said, well, if you're Christian and you're sort of struggling to find meaning and purpose, maybe a part of that could be that you haven't thought deeply enough about what
mhm.
you really believe in and what that really means to you. And yeah, I that was just kind of a quote that sort of
Yeah.
fits that narrative, because it really is purposeless if there is nothing. I mean, you're alive for 80 years maybe, and that's 80 years versus however many billion years the universe
Mhm.
is old. You're literally nothing. You're dust. You're use. It's like
Mhm.
what's that would be absolutely overwhelming.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's literally like, what's the point?
yeah.
And I can see how people get there, especially if they have bad experiences one way or another. But yeah, it's incredibly like hopeless, honestly. Like,
Mhm.
of I've had those thoughts before of um, one just like, okay, what on earth, those I've never been high before, but it feels like high moments. Like we're just like floating. Like I'm just here, I'm talking with
Floating.
you guys, I'm having this conversation, but like why is this happening? Why was I born? Why is it like those weird sort of thoughts?
Yeah.
Um, and then sometimes, especially like, I don't know, 16, 17, 18, when some of those thoughts are running wild, it's like, okay, I almost got like a little bit, if not like survivor's guilt, but it was that idea of, okay, like still in a vast majority of the world has incredible suffering right now. And
Mhm.
then for literally almost like the entirety of at least a known or written human history has been like insurmountable amount of suffering and just terrible lives. And I'm sitting here like recreating that on Xbox, playing like World War II games. Like, what a privileged life. Or like I get kind of like guilty in that place, but without something higher above me, like it's you can get pretty guilty and hopeless pretty
Mhm.
quickly.
Mhm.
And so I think that's where a lot of the world is in this space of either being numb or distracted or disconnected and like pretty hopeless. And so like that general idea of depression, it's um, I I think a lot of people are depressed because like there's a lot of sad going around.
Yeah.
There's like lots of reason for people to be sad, but then, in my opinion, we do a pretty poor job of telling people, "Oh, okay, you just need this pill to take it away," which is not super helpful either.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely sort of correlate or associate the curves of the decline in Christianity in the U.S. with
mm,
the increase in depression in the U.S. They overlap pretty well. I mean,
hmm
I I like to read. Well, I can't say read because it's really hard to read, but Nietzsche was a philosopher that basically was this atheistic philosopher, but he had this main idea that in the future, I think he's about he was around in the 1800s, late 1800s, I believe, and his idea was he's sort of prophetic. He said that the West has killed God, and
hmm
what are we going to do without God? So he got this diagnosis, essentially saying, well, the religiosity is going to decline, and what it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be, World War I, World War II. It's going to be
hmm
what we have now, this suicide epidemic. And I think he got the diagnosis really right, exactly right. It's just
hmm
his prescription was not right. His prescription for the diagnosis is we need to make our own values, essentially make our own identities, which is obviously very wrong.
That's an interesting
philosophy.
idea, or an interesting idea. I think you see that in lots of places, and I don't think it's like coincidental. I mean, people have been saying this for lots of years, of seeing people in poverty or seeing people with less than them, and they're like way happier, have way better, like at least say they have great lives. And we're like, how could you're living in a hut or a shack, and this is why. And they're like, well, there's some other values that I think are there to them that give them either meaning or connection to other people. Like it's this stage of life, there's lots of my friends and people at church, or just in general, people my age are having kids. And so you hear that idea of like, it takes a village. And like, I don't think that was just made up. Like we are meant to be in community. We are meant to be, there's a reason there's a church and a building to go to. That's important. It's not just because it's a place to give money or all that jazz. It's being together has value. And when we're alone, it's incredibly difficult. Like it's really, really hard. I don't believe two parents solo, even a loving family, great parents, good set of values, all that good sort of stuff. If they are like solely isolated and completely by themselves trying to raise kids, I think they'll have one heck of a hard time. Like it's just really difficult to do. And so, this is a totally different idea, but that almost gets into not necessarily like communism, but like I think it's good to have like small little villages of people, but in a big world sense, like it's not possible. But the idealistic view of that, I think, has value. I really think it does.
Yeah, community is essential to sort of I mean, you not only distribute like knowledge and sort of encouragement and helping each other grow, but you also distribute the suffering. Whenever someone is having a hard time, you have people to rely on, and without that community, that can be devastating. And another sort of stat that we talked about was this was the most wild one I've ever seen. This came out like 3 or 4 weeks ago, 2 to 4 weeks ago, and it was in the Wall Street Journal. And it was basically a poll, and I don't know exactly how the polling questions were worded because it's so unbelievable to me what this said, but essentially it was like, in the last 10 years, they asked, they asked Americans, do you find community to be a very important part of your life? 60% said yes 10 years ago. This year, 27% said yes. And like, that's a complete cutting it more than in half in just 10 years. And that seems really, really, really bleak for the future.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, you go ahead, Evan.
I was just saying that I guess it just means that even as churches grow smaller or shrink in size, they're just that much more important as we become more isolated in our own day-to-day lives of working remote, of doing less sports, going to less live events. The church is going to be that much more important, even though it's shrinking.
Yeah, anything like that, I think. Working from home, your work-life balance, being connected on the internet, the metaverse, like all these different things of like isolating is, I personally, just at least from personal experience and professional one, I don't think that's an inaccurate, like just totally facade stat. Like I think a lot of people devalue community because we've done a poor job, at least in my opinion. You can always say it was the last generation's fault. But in general, I feel like we've done a pretty bad job in the last, 50 years of valuing the family, valuing small communities. Like my entire life, I've had really best family, lived in great neighborhoods. And part of it's because my mom's a talker. But like I always knew my neighbors.
Mhm.
Always knew them, riding my bikes around, talking to everyone, people way down the street, people right next to us, people across the street. Like we knew everyone. Moved to a new house, know these guys and that people everywhere. I live in my own house. I know the neighbor right here. And I know the neighbor to my right has a family, and I've spoken to them like twice. Neighbor across the street from me, I've never spoken to once. It's like, and there's real no rhyme or reason, but I just don't see them, X, Y, or Z. I could give a lot of excuses, but ultimately is I don't value them. I don't value my neighbors in the way that my parents did. And I don't know how that got lost necessarily to me, but it's like, oh, I'll just find it somewhere else. And ultimately, I think that's a pretty big lie. I was like, well, where else am I finding it?
Yeah.
Well, am I being intentional in other areas? Probably not. Oh, I'm so busy at work. That's a different side tangent, but I think we've done a poor job of like being intentional and valuing those things. And now they've kind of drizzled away, and it's like, oh shoot, this is gone. Like a lot of people don't care about this. And then we wonder why people feel depressed and isolated.
Yeah. I on top of the being intentional thing, I also think we've devalued like serendipity and randomness. People don't go outside and sit on the front porch just to sit on the front porch anymore. Like I think we always talk about it at home every now and then. Is what if we just sat on the porch? Someone's going to come up to us. They're going to say hi. We're going to talk to people naturally. Like every time I work outside in the garden, probably the worst time. I don't like it when people come and talk to me during those times, but like it always happens. And I think that nowadays no one's ever outside to get those sort of moments of serendipity, running into random people, making random friends, because we're so locked inside and locked on the screens.
So the amount of kids that are families are having is going down.
Yeah.
I know that when I was a kid, by a lot. When I was a kid, my parents became friends with all the kids that I became or the parents of the kids that I became friends with. So we're having less kids. So we're having, now less people are playing t-ball, and now they're having that random, we played this random team, and now I'm friends with the kid on the other team, and my parents are friends with them. So like, I think that kind of builds on that as well.
Yeah. I find myself right now, just kind of the stage of life. We don't have like many friends or family members who have young kids, but especially like this time of year on a Saturday, I'm like, dang, I wish I could just like, and I guess I could, it'd be kind of creepy, but like, I wish I could just roll up to a niece or nephew's like soccer game at 10 a.m. on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Like just sit on lunch or like enjoy that. And I had brothers and sisters, so I used to dread those. It's like, oh, I just want to play video games or, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But I look forward to the days when I can do that a little bit more, because it's just being with people. Life can get pretty monotonous without some of those intentional things. And I think, you got to be intentional with it. Otherwise you'll poof. And it's like, okay, now it was already the new year, but now it's already like 2.5 weeks into April. We're soon going to get to the summer, and like the years just can roll by. And it's like, shoot, what have I been doing for the last 5 years?
Yeah. So on that sort of note, I know none of us are parents, but do you have any sort of comment on why no one's having kids anymore, or why that might be a terrible idea as from a personal level to decide you're just not going to have kids?
I haven't spent a ton of time thinking on why, like in general, people aren't. Because to be honest, the people I hang out with are people from work who are more inclined to think like me. Like that makes sense. And then church people who are also more inclined to think like me. And so those people are having kids.
Yeah.
That's not my personal experience of people not like actually deciding not to. I don't really know why though. It may be, the big ideas of why would you want to bring a kid into this cruel world, or, some of those main topics, but I haven't spent a ton of time thinking on it, but it is a problem. I had literally someone today tell me they were on drugs, they were drinking, in an abusive relationship. They had a kid with this person. And she said those words: I had a new purpose with my kid. I'm someone new. It changed me. And not that she was like pointless before and couldn't have done that without a child. But it definitely does change you in that way, to have something more and greater than yourself.
Yeah.
That pseudo idea of religion, something greater than me.
Yeah.
Well, children are definitely that. This is something bigger than just me. It's something I created. Man, that's getting me thinking on just in general that connection.
Responsibility.
Yeah. So I don't really know why people don't. Do you guys have any ideas or thought about it of why like people?
I thought a little bit about it. I think partially what you said is like the catastrophizing. I don't want to bring a kid into this terrible world, but I think the bigger reason is because we're more selfish. I can't say. I mean, I really want to have kids, but I keep thinking, oh, maybe in a few years, like, because I want to go travel in Europe. I want to go to like entirely selfish reasons, and I think that's a lot of our generation is pretty set on. Well, I want to get my career straight. I want to go travel the world first. I want to not commit in marriage till I'm 35.
I don't have the money, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. But well, the money thing, everyone always says that. Everyone always says it's a money thing, but it's like in the stats, it's completely untrue. The people who make the most amount of money are the least likely to have kids. People who make the least amount of money are the most likely to have kids. And
that's because those people are always busy.
They're
always working. You have so much money because you always work, and well, yeah. I only work my part-time job. But what do I have to do? Well,
have fun somewhere else.
Take it to the bedroom kind of thing. So like, I think that plays a partial into.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a big reason. I mean, you're career obsessed. You're going to make more money. You're not going to have time for kids. But that still doesn't explain why middle income, middle class are not having kids, and more poor people are having the most kids. I guess you could tap that down to perverse political incentives, but I don't really think it's that case.
Yeah, well, is it that? I mean, less people are getting married now, right? I think a lot of that
later too.
Yeah, they're getting married later, or they're not getting married at all. I know from a male perspective, it's a little scary. I guess I may have a girlfriend, but like I'm not married, so single, I guess you could say. You get married. Well, it doesn't work out. Guess what? I lose the kids. I lose half my stuff. I'm embarrassed. Maybe she says things that aren't true. Maybe she says some things that aren't true. Like it just doesn't seem to work out. And so I think a lot of men are less likely to get married, and so then they play into that hookup culture more.
Better pick well.
I don't know if it's that, not necessarily like a lack of commitment, but maybe devaluing marriage in general might be a reason. If you don't value the person with, like, why would you want not why would you want to have kids with them? But it kind of leads to Evan's point of that idea of there's lots of problems, lots of things that could go wrong. Let me wait and see to make sure. And then inevitably things probably do go wrong because it's a marriage and there's people involved. Not that like all marriages end in divorce, but things definitely go wrong. And then, here's my early exit, rather than sticking it out or maybe trying to fight through it.
50% of marriages end in divorce, and from the stats that I've read, around 80% of that is due to financial reasons.
Finances, sex are basically the big ones.
Yeah. And so you could say that men, once they get married, they try less maybe in career or along those lines or the woman starts to outpace the man as far as income, and she doesn't want to necessarily be the breadwinner, but she has to be. And it just like can cause conflict is kind of a thing from a side that I've seen.
I also wonder, like, from a completely rational perspective, you said we kind of devalue marriage, and I 100% agree with that. But I think because from a completely rational, logical perspective, marriage kind of makes zero sense. Like logically, like well, you could just commit to each other without having all the laws and everything, and that's fine. But there's something deeper than just pure rationality, and we don't actually consider that sort of sacred aspect of commitments and vows and marriage to each other. It's like words, but I think that kind of stuff is important. If you actually mean it and it means something to you, that's kind of changing your entire outlook and view on an actual commitment and relationship. And I worry that our culture is so overly rational that we sort of destroy these things that are deeper and things that are not purely rational that we don't quite understand and won't ever really understand.
Yeah. Have you guys ever like been volunteering or like done some sort of charity work before?
Yeah.
But most people have, and at least in my experience, most people who have done that genuinely, you hear when they come back or you ask them about, hey, what was it like serving on Thanksgiving to, I don't know, homeless people or doing X, Y, and Z. And most people, if you ask them, they go, oh man, it was awesome, but I was so much more blessed. I got so much more out of it than like anything I could have ever given to them, which I think is true. It's a weird phenomenon. But I'm saying that to say, I think it's one of those things that in devaluing marriage or finding logical sense, it's a very left brain idea. That right brain of, okay, there's you and there's me, but that's not the only thing in this relationship. Where we're those two individuals, but then there's us, and we're both connected to that. And that idea of rather than pouring into each other, we're pouring into us creates this weird, like boom, this weird, okay, I get more than what I put in. And so like volunteering, I think is the easiest way to explain that idea of, okay, I'm putting something in. And if I do that with a good heart or, good service, whatever that is, most people get more out of it. I go, oh, that was amazing. Like, well, what was that? Why?
Yeah.
Why do you feel better? Well, because you're doing something more than with you. It's that us idea. It's not just for them. You're contributing to those things. It makes you feel good. That's hard to tangibly explain though. And so that idea of that logical side, well, it doesn't really make sense. Probably not when we're only thinking on those ways. And I think a lot of people do. In like Western world, think very left brain for lots of things.
Well, and that's adding to the community. That's inputting into the community that higher power. And so, and volunteering is a lot more than just volunteering your money. It's like, if I give a foundation $500, that doesn't necessarily feel all that good. I might think, well, say money's tight and you give $200 away, maybe not a super smart idea, but you might, in a couple of weeks, you might be like, well, I wish I kind of had my $200 back. I didn't, you didn't get anything out of it, but actually giving your time, giving your energy to something like a Thanksgiving thing or a soup kitchen or, whatever it is, it gives you that much more back. So actually volunteering your time, I think, is so much more valuable on an individualistic, selfish level than just giving money to an organization.
Especially seeing like a tangible result.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, it's like a little dose of purpose for a second.
Well,
you just prescribe some purpose and go volunteer this weekend. Here's some purpose for you.
Was that something that you talk about maybe with some people that might come to you, Connor? Is like, well, have you tried volunteering? Maybe sometimes those people might not be great financially to allow time, have a bunch of abundant time to do that kind of stuff. But I don't know if that's a
lot of people, not a lot of people, I'd say like just in general, like a great way, especially, off the front end, we've made a little bit of work, you've moved forward, we're still feeling bad, X, Y, and Z. Okay, go do something nice for someone else. You're feeling bad, like go write a letter to someone else, how much you appreciate them, how much they mean to you. Go do this. And again, getting that idea of it's not necessarily about me, but pouring into someone else definitely has a positive effect on people. Because when we're in that place, it's isolating, it's lonely, it's very like, we enclose in on ourselves, which is fair enough. Like we all do that. But getting a little push to say, okay, I'm feeling this, but let me go outward and serve or do something else certainly is helpful.
Keaton, do you have any more questions? I have another question if you can't think of one.
Yeah, I guess I think I might be asking the exact same question as you, because I actually have it typed, but I never sent it. But you kind of barely touched on this.
Okay.
And I guess we could go fast since we're nearing the end. But the like paradox of suicide is why are first world countries and versus third world countries, why are there so many more suicides in first world countries versus third world countries? And then on top of that, you can even see it divided in first world countries where higher income people have much higher suicide rates than lower income people, especially particularly impoverished people have very low suicide rates as compared to the high income. So what is this paradox and why?
That's a good question, right? Why are we doing that? And I think in general, at least in these topics, the best question to ask is what makes this make sense. I believe like for the most part we can come up with something that makes sense. And like I'll give my cop out answer, I guess, but I do believe it is not all the time, but how do people in poverty survive? Like they struggle, they do all these sorts of things, but they do it together. Now, maybe it's not a healthy togetherness, but they do it together. You find gangs, you find this, you find that, you find your family and F everyone else. But like you got to have a circle around you. Again, community, purpose. We're going to get out of these things. We're going to strive forward. I think maybe like, that same general idea of in third world countries, they're either not necessarily thinking about it. It's not a thought that comes to them, or there's just something more that's driving them forward, either their religion or their kids or X, Y, and Z. For people who like make more money, I think a lot of people, not everyone, because there's lots of people who don't necessarily do this, but I think an okay majority pursue wealth, pursue, I don't know, purpose or performance as that identity is trying to like fill a hole that's in their heart that can't be filled by those things. So they reach the pinnacle. They reach the top of the echelon, top 0.11% or 0.001%, whatever it is, in their field, the thing that's been driving them. And then they still feel like crap. Easy way of thinking about it is Kevin Durant, right? Thunder. What did he want, right? He wanted the championship. And this is just me assuming. So take it with a grain of salt. But I do believe this is kind of true, is he left and wanted something, so he got it the best way that he knew how. And he said this, when he won that first championship, it didn't feel like he thought it was going to feel. Didn't feel like anything. Because ultimately, that's not really what he was wanting. Now, I don't know what that was. I don't want to speak for him. But for a lot of people, they put their purpose or their value, and it's like, once I reach there, it'll be enough. Then they reach it, and it's not enough. They go, okay, let me get to that next level. And they do it because they're capable and they're driven, and then they get all the way up there and they still don't feel that way. So they have either two options. It's either, well, this is pointless, like, F it, I'm done. Or they really have to reevaluate like their values or their that sense of identity. And so I think in general, that is a way to kind of help explain that is they go, and then they reach what they always thought they could get that would make them feel that way, and it doesn't. And so if they don't have anything else to fall back on, it's like, well, this is pointless. I've wasted either my whole life or I'll always feel this way, and then can lead down to some other solutions to that problem, I guess.
That was good.
Interesting.
That was really good.
It's my own thoughts there, but
no, I never thought about the particular. I had the idea of the high income people. I agree with that. You just say it 100 times better than I can.
Let's go.
I never had that idea about why people in poverty do so well. They do surround themselves with community. Like you said, gangs and sometimes not good, sometimes good. But they tend to always surround themselves with something. So that's very interesting. I was my idea originally, which I think I'm a convert now to that idea. My original idea is like people in poverty have this sort of a little bit of suffering, and at least some level of real life suffering can build some resilience over time. And I think a lot of people in higher incomes don't really have a lot of real life and then all of a sudden it hits you and you're not ready. But I think I'm more on your side now with the community thing than I ever have been before. So
And I would argue pretty strongly, like I've said this whole time, it's probably both.
yeah,
Whether
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
90-10 or
These
10-90
things are always super complex and
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if it was
'Cause
one thing, we could fix it super easily.
no.
yeah. Which is annoying to me. Like, I don't know. In most of my, like, again, day-to-day conversations, people agree with that idea, but you see others and they act as if it is just such a simple thing to fix. Very
No.
simple, very X equals Y sort of thing. Just super infuriating to me.
Mhm.
Well, if I always tell people, like, one of my spiels, they come in and talking to them towards the end of, like, there's no yellow brick road on how to get to change or how to get to where you want to. If there was, one, I wouldn't need a job, but two, you would have already found it. Like, they're not stupid. People try. And so it's not like there are some, I guess, that can stay in those places or cycles, but for the most part, people try to get out of that crap. It's just hard.
Mhm.
So that's a good question, though.
Well, I think it's a tangent off of that. You need to suffer enough to change. There's like this in between of, well, I'm suffering a little bit, but it's not uncomfortable enough to make a change. I need, you want just a little bit more suffering, and then, okay, well, now it's because we like to be complacent. We like things to be easy. We like things to fit into the square. The square piece fits into the square hole. Like we want things that way. But if we need to struggle a little bit more to push through to the next barrier, I guess. Through
Yeah,
I did a really
yeah.
bad job of explaining that, but
No, I think that you need contrast. And I mean, just the easiest way is with muscle growth. Like, how do you build muscle is by tearing it down and breaking it down. And there's obviously a point where that is not helpful. Like, you can really injure
Yeah.
yourself by doing that. But the way you grow is by breaking it down and then allowing it to come back stronger. And that's like the process is similar to growing in anything or changing. Is you've got to suffer is a harsh word, but I think it's accurate, as struggle and have uncomfortable situations. That's not the only, but it's a good motivator to do something different. And we live in a pretty cushy life. And so a lot of times it's pretty hard to get uncomfortable enough to change or to have people, nowadays it's to have people to challenge you to think in different ways. Oh, you can think what you want. Okay, well, then there's no sort of contrast there. There's no sort of resistance to actually create enough friction there. So yeah, that idea, it always reminds me, I've got, like, I don't know if you can see it. These are all my Game of Thrones books. They're my nice ones. And then my dogs chewed up those ones right there, but that's my, my guilty pleasure. I love those books. And one of my all-time favorite lines is in that book, is in the first one. I'm just going to assume most people are relatively familiar with Game of Thrones. I don't really feel like explaining it, but it's pretty nerdy. But this idea of Ned, the dad, talking to a son, and Ned cuts off the guy's head, blah, blah, blah. The son has to watch it. And the son says, "Man, Dad, how did you do that? I'm so afraid. Like, how are you so brave?" And, like, Ned, in nicer words than I can say, basically tells him, like, what are you talking about? Like, that's the only time you can be brave, is when you're afraid. It's not that I'm not fearful of these things. It's I don't let that, like, hold me back and move forward, which is just like a beautiful idea of a lot of people think, well, once I'm not afraid or once I'm not feeling this, then I can go and do these things. Like, totally false. Like, good luck with that. Good luck with not feeling things. It's, can we have those emotions there, or whatever we're feeling, and also let something else, us, drive us forward? And that's the true, like, at least in that sense of bravery. If there's nothing to be afraid of, then it's not brave. It's just like eating a cookie or something like that. Like, that's, you have to have something there to be afraid of, but we sometimes get that switch. So that kind of idea of, and what you're talking about, of contrast or suffering, I think kind of fits in that same realm.
I think the quote is, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than fear."
Yeah.
Any hot takes? Keaton, do you want to go first, or about what we talked about, or anything random hot take?
Oh, I don't really have anything. I mean, I think I don't think it's a hot take at all. I think we're going to get worse in this mental health epidemic until, I don't know, something drastic changes. I would say sort of a resurgence in religion, a resurgence in purpose, but I don't know. It seems pretty bleak right now, from my point of view.
Connor?
Hot take. Pickles are trash. I think, let's see, what's another hot take? I think Star Wars is kind of trash right now.
That's not a hot take.
I guess maybe it's not too hot. Hot take. I don't know. What else could be a good idea? I'm not a typically controversial person, especially recently. I can ride a fence pretty good. What else do I not really like? I don't know. I enjoy stories. That's the thing that's coming to mind. I'm trying to Harry Potter, Star Wars.
So are you happy that HBO Max is going to remake Harry Potter?
No. I think that's so stupid. That's the annoying thing is, and this isn't really a hot take, but like no one's creative anymore.
Yes, this is my big spiel.
Or no one's like ambitious enough or has the like studios, whatever it is, to get out to the mass of people to be creative, to try to fail. Everything has to be a hit. And so we got to, if everything's a hit, nothing's a hit. That same idea. And the way we get those cool stories is by people making them. I think they're important and they're fun. But no, I hate that idea. We already have movies and books and
made within the last 11 years, like not old at all.
Yeah, not old. So yeah, those are pretty horrible hot takes. But my wife loves pickles. That's why it comes to my mind. I just don't like them.
I don't know if I have any. Maybe a prediction, I guess, maybe not necessarily a hot take, is kind of along the lines of what you said, Keen. We're going to get to a breaking point here, and I'm fearful of one side and optimistic for the other.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it has to reach that point where it's that pendulum has to swing far enough to where, like we've been talking about, something has to change. It reaches a point of no return.
Yeah.
But I think like for people in general, not necessarily switching back to something more important, but that idea of where we see all these things online, all this doom, despair, people suffering, people getting shot at, like all this different stuff. Like, focus on what's your day like.
Yeah.
Like, what is I remember very vividly in 2020 when all the riots were happening and things were going on in the town I was in at the moment. And COVID was happening, so no one was really outside. But I went on a walk with my dog and my wife, and like everything's green, like the birds were chirping. I saw people of color, people like said hello, everyone was smiling. Like my real world, like what was actually happening in front of me was totally normal, which is not to be naive. There's things bigger than us, but like I can't freaking change those things.
Yeah, we were never meant to for the entire world to be our village.
Yeah,
the way social media makes it.
Yeah. So that idea of like, okay, what's your circle of influence? And those are the things you have changed can make a difference in. And everyone else, not like screw them, but like they gotta do it for themselves on some level.
Yeah.
You can't do everything for everyone. So
yeah, work at your local level, make things better. Get some. I'm totally on board with the optimism. I did say a doom and gloom thing, which I do think I do have a pretty negative outlook on mental health itself, but in general. You could change things around you. You could help change that curve just around your 5 closest friends. You could help change that curve around your family. You could help change that curve around your church by getting involved. You could do all these things, and you can really make a difference at the local level. And I am super optimistic on different outside of mental health and outside of community on like we live in the best time in history. I don't think you could ever pick a better time to be alive. Medically, technologically, of course, the technology has its flaws, but it's also incredibly useful. So yeah, there's a lot of things to be hopeful and optimistic about. But if you need to start focusing on that local level to what you can really impact.
Yeah.
Well, if nobody has anything else, thank you so much, Connor, for coming on.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Check
Yeah,
us out on social media. Go ahead, Connor.
Well, I was just gonna say I appreciate you guys wanting to talk about it. I try not to impose these thoughts on people. They're sometimes a little not necessarily overwhelming, but it's deeper than, hey, how's the weather? How's work going?
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So it's a passion of mine, a side of myself that I don't always get to show to people. So I appreciate y'all wanting to talk about it.
I think we should do it again soon. I think that's probably the most relevant topic, one of the top 3 most relevant topics in society right now. So,
yeah, I'm game whenever.
Cool.
Well, I mean, this podcast, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever talked about it on here, but one of the first ideas I had of podcast was like, I'm sitting around, we watched a basketball game or something, or we're just sitting around talking in college or, at somebody's house. And it's like, did we have some kind of like deep conversations? We should just like record this. And that's kind of how like it started, for at least from my perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I have smart friends. I'm not very smart, but I have smart friends.
Yeah. I think it's, especially for guys, I think it's important to engage in those, it's really easy. I mentioned earlier in the us talking of my friends. I don't want to, let me say this real quick. This idea of quantity versus quality. I think at least in relationships, it's all quantity. There's no such thing as quality time. And you get quality time through quantity. And so if I came on here and I'd never met you guys, and was like, oh, I just want to have the best time ever, the best podcast, that's going to be great, it would be really inorganic, really like stale and weird. You'd think I was a weirdo because I'm trying to be like your best friend. And so we get like those, none of those deep conversations, I'm sure, Evan, came from you planned it out. It just happened. I'm like, oh, we need to do this more often. But doing these podcasts and doing these things like that can engage in that idea of just the quantity. If we can have them enough, the quality will come, and then they'll be a lot more organic that way.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah. Clip it, chat. Well, thank you guys. This has been Simply Technical. We'll catch you on the next episode. If I can find my cursor.